Welcome back to Klinga Games. We're back with our Series 10 VGC videos. This week we're doing the first restricted from my personal favorite generation, Generation 5. We're doing Reshiram. So Reshiram is not my favorite from the generation. My favorite is Zekrom, but I'm still working on creating a good Zekrom team. So Reshiram was a lot easier to team build. He fits the meta a lot better. He really does really well against a lot of the major threats. So he was actually surprisingly easy to build with, and I think he's a very underrated restricted in the current format. So I'm really excited for this team. It's personally one of my favorites. It'll probably be the team that I use to climb to Master Ball in October, which this is going live in October, but I recorded this in September. So this may be the team I use to climb to Master Ball in October, just because I really like playing with it, but I'm not totally sure. So I really enjoyed the team. Hopefully you guys will too. So we'll go ahead and hop into the battles. Okay, getting into the first video against Sonic, who has a pretty cool team here. Palkia, Stakataka, Landorus, Indeedee, Alolan Marowak, and Serena. So that's a very cool team there. I really like Palkia. I'd like to make a team for it. It's my favorite from the Gen 4 restricteds. And then Alolan Marowak is a very cool option with Indeedee to prevent Indeedee and Serena to prevent priority moves. So they're very determined not to be hit by priority. So what we do here is we go ahead and lead Reshiram and Suicune with Urshifu in the back, and trying to pick between Landorus and Rillaboom. Landorus gives us Intimidate in case of Alolan Marowak, but Rillaboom helps against the Palkia, Stakataka, and Landorus, so I ended up going with Rillaboom there. Serena is a little bit worrying with Rillaboom, just because you can't Grassy Glide, and they have a terrain option as well, but Rillaboom still provides some utility even if it's not using priority. This Rillaboom actually has knockoff. It's Grassy Glide, knockoff, Wood Hammer, and Fake Out. So Fake Out and Grassy Glide are stopped by Indeedee and Serena, but knockoff is still a great utility move. So I'm still Rillaboom can still do a lot even if the priority moves are being shut down. That's what I'm trying to say. So we go ahead and bring out Reshiram, the Wish Granter, and Suicune with a Japanese name. So this Suicune I actually got through a Wonder Trade, I believe it is, or maybe a GTS trade. I did not have one that had the Inner Focus ability, and I did not want to use an ability patch, so I went ahead and used my Japanese one. So I just think that's pretty interesting. Just the Japanese name mixed in with all English names, but that's the story behind it. So turn 1, I switch Reshiram out into Rillaboom, expecting a Dragon-type move from Palkia, which it's usually Spatial Rend, and then I Snarl with Suicune, since I'm facing them two primarily special attackers. So the Reshiram is max special attack and max speed with safety goggles, but I do not have Protect on it, which can be unfortunate, but it has 4 moves that are very, very useful. The last move, Mystic Fire, is really helpful against special attackers that don't necessarily threaten Reshiram, but threaten its partners, which is also the same case for Suicune with Snarl. So those two together can actually debuff a lot of special attacking teams, especially if you target around the other's weakness. So for instance, we don't see it in this game, but Reshiram handles Regieleki pretty well, where Suicune does not. So Reshiram has the ability to take out Regieleki or reduce its special attack while Suicune protects. So they form a nice little combo there to help protect the other from dangerous special attackers. So Rillaboom takes that Spatial Rend pretty well for Palkia, which is the move I expected it to do, and then we go ahead and Fake Out Landorus, and we just Snarl again with Suicune. Palkia is pretty dependent on its special attack, and it doesn't really have a way to reset it without switching in and out. And it does not do pretty much any damage to Suicune. So Suicune just sitting on the field snarling makes Palkia very useless very quickly. And the same thing is sort of true for Landorus. It does threaten Rillaboom, but it does not really threaten Suicune very much, especially now at -1. So once again, Suicune can just basically just sit on the field here and just keep snarling over and over and let its partners kind of do damage. So we go ahead and we Grassy Glide with Rillaboom into the Landorus slot, and then we go ahead and set up a Tailwind here just to give us speed control. Which this Rillaboom is max attack, max HP with Assault Vest, so unfortunately it just barely misses the KO there onto that Landorus. That Landorus probably has some defense investment because Rillaboom, I think, should take it out most of the time. I could be wrong, it could just be a roll, or Rillaboom might just not do the damage I'm expecting, but that's just kind of my instinct. But it does do most of the damage into Landorus, so that's really good. And we do have effective speed control now. So what we do here is we go ahead and knock off into Landorus and we Snarl. Now this is a bit of a misplay, as you can see here. So Suicune gets the Snarl off first, it's faster than my Rillaboom, and it does knock out the Landorus. My thought process was that Landorus was more important to KO, but if I was going to do that I should have just Grassy Glided into it. But luckily the Snarl does get the KO, so Rillaboom is able to target that knockoff into the Palkia slot, so it actually loses its Lustrous Orb, which thanks to that and damage reduction, Rillaboom actually survives another Spatial Rend, so Rillaboom is to stick on the field for a little bit longer, which is really nice. And then we also get rid of Landorus, which is definitely my opponent's best answer into Reshiram, so it's really nice to get that off the field. Unfortunately, Indeedee comes in here and it takes over the terrain, so Rillaboom no longer has priority Grassy Glides here. So I go ahead and I switch Rillaboom out into Urshifu, and surprise surprise, I Snarl with Suicune. This is the dark Urshifu on this team. So Suicune gets the Snarl off here first, which is very helpful. And then Indeedee goes for an Expanding Force, which luckily we bring in Urshifu here, who is immune to it, and Suicune takes almost no damage. And then Palkia goes ahead and sets up the Trick Room here. So it's not the best situation for us to be in Trick Room, but especially with Palkia at -4, I think, special attack at this point, it's not really a threat to my Pokemon, so I don't really mind the Trick Room a whole lot. So what I do here with Urshifu is I just go ahead and Detect, just to feel things out, see what they do, and I continue to Snarl with Suicune. Suicune with the leftovers and its set is all bulk, it can be very frustrating for opponents to deal with, just because unless the opponent has a massive special super effective move that can get off the field, it basically just sits on the field and just debuffs the opponent and just really causes headaches for him. So we're in a very, very good position here. Palkia is going to do no damage at all, and we wasted basically a turn of their Trick Room here, and a turn of their Psychic Terrain. So what we do here is we go ahead and Wicked Blow into Palkia with Urshifu, and we Snarl with Suicune. Wicked Blow is just, without us, if it's not super effective, it's Urshifu's best move. It just does massive damage to everything. So their Indeedee goes for Follow Me as they switch in Stakataka here. So Stakataka can be a little bit scary, but with the Pokemon I've got out on the field right now, it's really, really not. This Urshifu is actually very bulky. It's not just like max speed, max attack. It's got a ton of bulk into it, and so it doesn't really mind Trick Room all that much either. Obviously with Stakataka, it's going to go slower than it anyway. So it's actually a pretty good Urshifu that kind of runs in both Tailwind and Trick Room pretty effectively. which I think is pretty fun to play with. But then obviously that Wicked Blow gets the KO against the DD. If I was my opponent there, they probably should have just attacked with Indeedee and let Stakataka take that Wicked Blow, because Stakataka has amazing defense. So it would have been better to let it take the damage there, and instead they lose their Indeedee here. So they go ahead and Rock Slide after we detect with Urshifu, which does a pretty decent amount to Suicune actually, but Suicune has Inner Focus, so it will not be getting a flinch. That's not in the cards for them. And then we do get the Snarl off, which lowers Palkia's special attack to -1. So now they cannot switch out, so these Snarls are permanent. So what I do here is I go ahead and Sucker Punch into Palkia with the Urshifu, and I switch in Rillaboom. So right now they're probably pretty comfortable that they can't be hit before they move, but because we have Rillaboom in the back, because we switched it out earlier, we get to reset the terrain, which gets rid of Psychic Terrain, which means that priority moves are back on the menu for us. So we get a nice Sucker Punch here into Palkia, which takes it down into the red, and then they get a Rock Slide off with their Stakataka, which unfortunately does KO Rillaboom, but it did its job and got rid of that Psychic Terrain. So that's a win. Sometimes with this team, or with most teams in general, you have to kind of calculate what you can and cannot lose. And at that point, Rillaboom was pretty expendable. We didn't really need it to stick around on the field for too much longer. So they do hit their Hydro Pump into Urshifu, but like I mentioned, this Urshifu has a lot of bulk investment, and Palkia is at -1. So Urshifu doesn't even take half from that, which is really impressive. So I go ahead and bring out my Reshiram back onto the field after Trick Room is ended, and then we go ahead and Sucker Punch into Palkia, and we Earth Power into Stakataka. The reason I chose Sucker Punch here was just to make sure we go before Palkia. Like I mentioned, Urshifu doesn't have a lot of speed investment, and Palkia was faster than my Suicune, so I didn't want to risk it. And if they did set up Trick Room, then we can just Sucker Punch them after that. We can just keep that going until they either get out of Trick Room and Reshiram can take them out, or they make an attack and Urshifu takes them out. So, good game to Sonic, and we'll hop into game number 2. Okay, getting into game number 2, my opponent has a Calyrex Ice team with Calyrex Ice, Snorlax, Oranguru, Indeedee, Turtonator, and Mimikyu. So, half of this team is pretty standard, the other half is very interesting. Normally, you see Calyrex run with Mimikyu and Oranguru, so that is not very surprising, but the Turtonator and the Snorlax are very surprising. I do like both those Pokemon a lot, so it's very cool to see them. And the Indeedee's kind of halfway. You usually see it more with Calyrex Shadow than Calyrex Ice, but it's still not like an unexpected choice. So you see me kind of just going through my team here, looking at them, trying to make a decision. What I end up going with is Suicune Reshiram to start the game, with Urshifu and Rillaboom in the back. My thought process here is that the Suicune has the bulk to survive any of these Pokemon's attacks if it goes under Trick Room, and Reshiram can give some really big attacks to hopefully prevent Trick Room from going up, especially against Mimikyu, where Reshiram has the Turbo Blaze ability, which ignores other abilities, so Reshiram is able to one-hit KO Mimikyu through disguise with Shadow Ball. So that's why I brought Reshiram to start things off. It's also really good into Calyrex Ice, because Fusion Flare does massive damage into it, and depending on the EV spreads, could one-hit KO it. So it's usually a pretty good choice against Calyrex Ice teams. But like I was mentioning earlier in the video, Reshiram actually has a very good spot in the meta, in my opinion. It doesn't do too great into Kyogre, but not horrible either. Fire Dragon offsets the water, so it's just a neutral hit. And and then it's really good into Zacian. It's pretty good into Zamazenta because it takes neutral from Fairy. Or not Zamazenta, Xerneas, because it takes neutral from Fairy. So it's a really cool spot in the meta. I think it's a really good Pokemon. So they lead Indeedee and Snorlax here. So what I'm expecting is Follow Me into Belly Drum, but there's not a whole lot I can do to prevent that. So what I do here is I go ahead and Scald into Snorlax, hoping they don't follow me, but they do, and Fusion Flare into the Indeedee just to get some big damage off onto it. So we do get the Fusion Flare off, which is a really cool animation. It's not the only reason I chose Fusion Flare over Blue Flare, but Fusion Flare's got such a cool animation. The main reason I chose Fusion Flare over Blue Flare is mostly the accuracy. I really don't feel comfortable using an 85% accurate move as my main stab. So Fusion Flare being 100% accurate is important. One thing I did not notice at the time, during when I played this battle, is Snorlax did not have a Recovery Berry. So you can see here Snorlax has a Custap Berry, which is very cool. So if you don't know, Custap Berry will make your next move go first, regardless. And then they use Self-Destruct. So they have Belly Drum, Custap Berry, Self-Destruct, which is incredible. And they switch into Oranguru, who has Telepathy, or Telepathy, I don't know why I said it that way. Telepathy is its ability, so it doesn't get affected. So Snorlax there is able to take out both my Suicune and my Reshiram there. So that is very, very cool. My thought process there was that I could take out the Indeedee with Reshiram and hopefully burn the Snorlax, but they had that strategy going, which is a really, really cool best of one strategy. I don't know how consistent it would be in like a best of 3 tournament, but in a best of 1 situation, that is such a cool strategy. I really love to see that. I was very frustrated at the time, don't get me wrong. When I saw that go across the field, I was immediately upset, but as soon as the battle ended, I was like, that is a very cool strategy, so I may try and steal it at some point. But enough geeking out about the strategy. What I do here is I go ahead, we're forced to bring out Urshifu and Rillaboom now, and then they bring their Indeedee back onto the field. So there's not a whole lot we can do. I check my speeds here, and the Urshifu is faster than Rillaboom. I was thinking maybe we could switch it up, but no, we don't have any option to do that. So I'm forced to Wicked Blow into the Indeedee and knock off into Oranguru, which they follow me, so I couldn't really prevent Trick Room from going up here. And then we do get to KO the Indeedee here. Normally I expect Oranguru to have Mental Herb, but unfortunately this one has the Dark Berry, which I can never remember what it's called. We'll find out here in just a second. Colbur Berry, that's it, the Colbur Berry. Yeah, so they have the Colbur Berry, so they take half damage from that, which, judging by that, it still would have survived even if it was Mental Herb. So that is checkmate. They bring out their Calyrex Ice here, and there's not a whole lot we can do. So it's just a really, really cool strategy by my opponent. Did not see it coming at all. So I figured this had to be in the video. After I saw it, there's no way I could leave something like that out of this video. Really cool strategy. And they go ahead and Glacial Lance here. Fairly obvious. What else are they going to do? Easily knock out the Rillaboom in one hit. Rillaboom never survives the Glacial Lance. And then they do over half damage to Urshifu and get the Chilling Knee boost. And then another obvious move is Oranguru uses Instruct, which is its signature move and a very frustrating move, especially for me. And they get a second Glacial Lance off right away. We do not get to attack. And that is the end of game number 2. So very quick game there. So really good game to my opponent. Very cool strategy, which I will probably try to steal. So we'll get into game number 3. Alright, getting into game number 3, and we get immediate redemption against Calyrex Ice here. So my opponent has Calyrex Ice, Mimikyu, Regieleki, Incineroar, Celesteela, and Stakataka, which is, I was gonna say more general Calyrex Ice team, but I can't really say that because you usually don't see Calyrex Ice with Celesteela or Regieleki in my experience. So it actually is a pretty interesting team here too. So really cool. So what I do here is I go ahead and lead Reshiram Suicune with Rillaboom and Urshifu in the back. And then we wait for my opponent to pick their Pokemon. As you can see here, just looking at the team at a glance, the Urshifu is black glasses. I couldn't give it Focus Sash because of the Crobat, and I didn't want to give it Life Orb because it's more bulky. It's meant to stick around and kind of bother the opponent with critical hits. So black glasses was my choice for the move, which I think it's honestly, if you saw my Zamazenta team, this Urshifu has the exact same spread as my Water Urshifu, and they both have their type boosting item. So I kind of got lazy there and just said it worked for Water, it'll work for Dark too. So they go ahead and lead their Mimikyu and their Regieleki. So in this matchup, I'm not as scared of Trick Room as the previous battle, because they don't have Psychic Terrain on their team. So I have my Urshifu in the back, which I know can beat Calyrex 1v1. So what I do here is I go ahead and Fusion Flare into the Regieleki, and I switch Suicune out into Rillaboom, expecting a big attack into the Suicune slot to try and take it out. I'm sure my opponent knows, just as well as I know, how good Suicune is into the Calyrex matchup with its ability to burn with Scald and its just general bulk. So it's important to protect Suicune here because of how important it can be into their main attacker. And then they went ahead and did Thunder, which is wild, into Rillaboom, and they hit it. So pretty good luck there, just getting a nice big hit onto my Rillaboom. But Rillaboom's got the Assault Vest, so it takes it pretty well. And then we get a one hit with Fusion Flare into the Regieleki. But my opponent, I don't know if they read into my switch or if they were just trying to burn the Suicune as well in case it survived. But they went ahead and Will-O-Wisp into the Suicune slot, so we do get burnt on Rillaboom, which is unfortunate, but they did not set up Trick Room, and we get to keep our Suicune, which is even more important as we can see one of their Pokemon is Incineroar, which is my least favorite meta Pokemon, just because of its design. As you can see, I don't have a problem using Rillaboom over and over again. So what I do here is I go ahead and Earth Power into the Incineroar and fake it out with Rillaboom. I'm expecting them to fake out, so it just makes sense to get my own fake out into them to prevent them from moving, just because Rillaboom is faster than Incineroar. That is one of Incineroar's weaknesses in general, is that it has a bunch of great moves and nice little niches that it fills. But as far as fake outers go, it is pretty slow. So if you're running your own fake out Pokemon into Incineroar, you can usually fake out into them and be pretty certain that they won't get theirs off. So played into that strength of ours and prevented Incineroar from getting a fake out there. And Earth Power took it down, so now it is in Earth Power KO range. So I go ahead and Earth Power again with Incineroar, or not with Incineroar, into Incineroar, and I switch out my Rillaboom into Suicune, kind of expecting Trick Room to come up here. I guess I could have prevented it with a Shadow Ball into the Mimikyu, but I was pretty confident with my late game with Urshifu in the back, and I was more worried about Incineroar coming in and messing things up, so I went ahead and made Incineroar my priority here. And then as predicted, they do go ahead and set up Trick Room with the Mimikyu. So It's a little bit risky, but I figured here we trap Calyrex onto the field, and they're down to just these two Pokemon, which are not very threatening to my Urshifu, usually. So Mimikyu can be threatening with Play Rough, but we've already seen 3 of its moves, which are Shadow Claw, Trick Room, and Will-O-Wisp. So I'm pretty safe thinking that I don't think they have Play Rough. I could be wrong. That could be the normal set, is those 3 moves and Play Rough, but I did not feel like they had. So, and then they do take out my Reshiram with the Calyrex Ice, which is fine by me. There was nothing in the back. Reshiram had basically done its job, and the Pokemon that were in the back are more important for the late game. So I went ahead and let Reshiram go down because I didn't want to switch either of the 2 in the back in and risk losing them too early. So I go ahead and bring Rillaboom out to replace the Reshiram, and I fake out into the Calyrex Ice, and I just scald it again with Suicune. Unfortunately, they do have Protect, so we go ahead and waste a turn here, but we are in Trick Room, so it's good to play it safe, because even though we're wasting a turn, we're wasting a Trick Room turn, which is good for us. So they do go ahead and get the Shadow Claw off into Rillaboom, but Rillaboom is not going to survive another turn facing down a Calyrex Ice in the Trick Room, so I'm not too worried about damage into Rillaboom right now. Unfortunately, I did mistime my grassy terrain turns a little bit. It's not a huge deal, but we lose our priority move into the Calyrex and into the Mimikyu, so a little bit frustrating, but nothing too worrying. So they do get a Glacial Lance off here into the Suicune and Rillaboom, which does all that's left of Rillaboom, but Suicune handles that pretty well. This Suicune is actually mostly physical bulk, mostly for Zacian than Calyrex Ice, but obviously both being physical attackers, it's nice for Calyrex Ice as well. So this kind of does get confirmation that they were aiming at Suicune with the Will-O-Wisp earlier. So they go ahead and burn us, but at this point we don't really mind, and then we get our own burn off here with Scald into the Calyrex. So third tries the charm, first time we didn't get the burn, second time protected, third time get the burn, so not the traditional way, but 1 in 3 is right around the chances for it. And then we go ahead and bring out Urshifu, which is our late game surprise. I'm sure a lot of people look at the team and assume that it's Water Urshifu, just doubling up on Water with Suicune, but Dark Urshifu does really, really well into some key Pokemon that Reshiram can struggle against, like Calyrex Ice. So we go ahead and just protect Urshifu here and just Snarl with Suicune. Suicune obviously can take another Glacial Lance based on the damage from before, and Snarl will go ahead and break the disguise on Mimikyu, which is really important for the late game. So as you can see there, Suicune takes that really, really well, mostly because of Calyrex Ice's burn. And then we get a Snarl off here, which does a big chunk of damage into Calyrex, surprisingly, and gets the disguise broken on Mimikyu. Obviously, we don't really care about their special attack, since both are physical attackers, but it's nice to get that disguise broken. And then this was the last turn of Trick Room. So Trick Room goes away, and Urshifu is now the fastest thing on the field, which gives us a free Wicked Blow into the Calyrex Ice, and a nice Scald into the Mimikyu. Urshifu was perfect for this late game because it does not care about Protect, and it outspeeds Calyrex Ice, so they don't really have an out here. We've got them pretty well pinned where there's nothing they can do to win this game. We outspeed them outside of Trick Room, and all of our moves are 100% accurate, so this is basically a game, but we're going to play it a couple more turns just to see how it all shakes out. So we get the nice KO into the Calyrex there, and then Scald does a pretty big chunk of damage into the Mimikyu, and the Mimikyu goes for Trick Room, which isn't the worst choice because Mimikyu is now faster than both of my Pokemon, but both my Pokemon are well out of the range of KO by Mimikyu, and both of them will win the 1v1. So winning the 2v1 is not going to be a challenge whatsoever. So we go ahead and same moves as before, just different targeting. We go ahead and Wicked Blow into the Mimikyu, and then Scald into Mimikyu again. So they do get the Will-O-Wisp off here into Urshifu, but at this point, it's a little too late for them to do anything to save themselves. So Scald there is a 4-hit KO, and then Wicked Blow goes ahead and finishes them off. We are burnt, but it's still a critical hit from a stab. Black Glasses boosted Urshifu, so good game to my opponent, and we will get into the fourth and final game. Alright, so on to the fourth battle. My opponent has Suicune, Amoonguss, Eternatus, Regieleki, Landorus, and Entei. So one cool thing about this team is, I believe this team is Wolf Glick's team that he used to take Eternatus to rank number 1. So I know this is a very good team, and it's actually where I got my idea for a special Landorus Incarnate. So, or not Incarnate, Landorus T that uses special attacks. So I kind of stole that from this team. So it was really cool to face it here. What I went ahead and did here was I led Rillaboom Landorus with Reshiram and Suicune in the back. So I did not watch the full video of Wolf Glick taking Eternatus number 1. I need to go back and finish that video, but I did recognize the team as soon as I saw it. So really cool to face it down. I know it's obviously not Wolf Glick playing it, but it's always cool to play against teams that like famous people and world champions have made. So I just thought that was really cool. And they go right down to the wire picking their team. So they're giving this one a lot of thought. And we are in Hammerlock Stadium for this battle. I try to get my stadium to match my Pokemon as much as possible when I do these restricted Pokemon teams. So for the last two, maybe the last 3, at least the last 2, I've done Dragon. So I've been having my trainer card as Hammerlock Stadium. Anyway, my opponent leads Regieleki and Entei, which is a worrying combination for me, but I know that Landorus has the ability to take down Entei, and I think that they know that as well. So what I do here is I go ahead and fake out into the Regieleki, and I Earth Power into the Regieleki. So this is a very risky move here because Entei has the ability to one-hit KO my Rillaboom, and it can burn Landorus. Although because it's a special Landorus, that's not as big of a deal here. But Regieleki also could protect here, so it's a bit of a risky move. But Entei does go ahead and protect here, and we get the fake out off, which is also a critical hit. But obviously that doesn't matter because we're following up with Earth Power from Landorus, so Regieleki could have been at full health and still got down there. So it was a risky first move, but it does pay off for us and gets us the KO on Regieleki, which can be a real big issue for my team. Especially where both of the Tailwinders on my team, Suicune and Crobat, are both weak to Electric. And then they go ahead and bring out Eternatus, which it looked like it was on a Love Ball, which is really cool. So I go ahead and I switch Rillaboom out into the Suicune, and I Earth Power into Eternatus with Landorus. My thought process here was that they would maybe double up into Rillaboom, or at least Sludge Bomb into Rillaboom. And so they would attack into the Suicune, and Landorus would get a huge hit off. Unfortunately, I guessed wrong, and they target into the Landorus with Eternatus and get the one-hit KO. So Eternatus is actually such a cool Pokemon. I don't know if I'm going to do it because I've already done 2 Gen 8 teams. But as soon as I get done doing at least one from each generation, I'm gonna do as many as I can after that, just with legendaries I like. So Eternatus may be one of the choices for that. I was really excited to use it for my all poison team, but that league ended up getting canceled, so I did not get to use it. So I may try and use it sometime soon. They do get a Sacred Fire off into Suicune, which does not do a whole lot of damage, but it does get the burn, which is very unfortunate. So I go ahead and bring out my Reshiram here. What I do is I go ahead and I Tailwind with Suicune, and I switch Reshiram out into Rillaboom, just trying to bait that, I forget what it's called, Dynamax Cannon, I think it's called, into the Rillaboom slot, which I know can take it. Yeah, Dynamax Cannon, which is such a cool animation. Pretty much all the Gen 8 restricteds got really cool animations for their signature moves, which is really fun. And then we do get the Tailwind off here with Suicune. And then Entei actually roars Suicune out, which brings back in Reshiram, who's the only option at this point. But that's not so bad because now we are under Tailwind, so we do outspeed Eternatus. So I go ahead and Earth Power into Eternatus with the Reshiram, and I fake out Eternatus just to get a free move off. Which I'm hoping that because Reshiram was just brought out with Roar, they may forget that this is also Rillaboom's first turn on the field. So I do get the fake out here into Eternatus and a big Earth Power, which unfortunately comes just short of KOing. But it's outside. It's not like... It wasn't that close to KOing, so I don't know if Life Orb would have gotten the KO. I don't think it would have. I think Eternatus lives that regardless of my item. So it's hard to say, but I don't think having the safety goggles as opposed to Life Orb really hurt me there. So what I do is I go ahead and I Earth Power again into Eternatus, and I Scald into the Entei slot. Just as my highest damaging move on Suicune. Unfortunately, they are aware that Earth Power is a huge threat to their Eternatus now, so they switch it out into the Suicune, which it does a respectable amount of damage, I would say. And then we do get Scald off into Entei, which does a big amount of damage. Which is partially thanks to a critical hit, so that's pretty lucky. But that luck is immediately reversed as they get a critical hit onto Reshiram with a Sacred Fire. But because Reshiram is Dragon Fire, it is 4 times resistant to Sacred Fire, and it can't be burnt. So really not a whole lot of worry there from us. It's not really going to do a whole lot of damage to us. And then unfortunately the grass is gone from the field, so even though we have leftovers on Suicune, we will no longer be getting recovery. The leftovers and the burn offset each other each turn. And then expecting a Protect from Entei, we go ahead and we Mystical Fire and Snarl. Or we Mystical Fire into the Suicune and we Snarl with our Suicune. So we do get the Protect here from Entei. I figured it would Protect just because it's not really a threat to either of my Pokemon. So I wanted to go ahead and play into that and just lower their Suicune's special attack as much as possible. Make it as much of a non-threat as I can. Which we do successfully land both. So their Suicune just got onto the field and it is already at -2 special attack. So that's a big win for us. Unfortunately, they do have their own Tailwind and they set that up. So our speed control is no longer an option. So here I actually make a mistake. I Earth Power into the Entei and I Snarl with Suicune after our Tailwind ended. What I should have done here is I should have attacked into the Suicune slot and kind of forced them to bring out Eternatus into a Snarl. I got a little eager to win here and knocked out the Entei, but I didn't think about the fact that they now had speed control and they can one-shot Reshiram with Dynamax Cannon. So that is not the best move on my part. I really should have played to my outs a little bit more. Suicune was the bigger threat there. Entei was not doing much damage to either of my Pokemon that are on the field. And Eternatus in the back is the biggest threat they have. So just really a misplay out there on my part. Trying to end the game quickly as opposed to ending the game with a win. So they do go ahead and bring out their Eternatus again. At this point I don't really have much of an option. I don't have Protect on Reshiram. So I go ahead and try and Earth Power into Eternatus and I Snarl with Suicune. Just to get special attack lowered on both. Which, unfortunately, Reshiram does not take that in the slightest. So they do get a KO with their Eternatus. Fortunately, Eternatus does not have one of the boosting abilities that causes it to get stronger every time it gets a KO. So we do not have to worry about it getting boosts here. But we're down to just Suicune against their Suicune and Eternatus. Now fortunately, we have gotten a ton of Snarls off into their Suicune and one into Eternatus, so neither of their Pokemon are as threatening as they normally are. So we do have a shot here. And just to kind of see what they're going to do, I go ahead and Protect here with my Suicune. Eventually. Flipping between my options a little bit. Which, in hindsight, didn't really get me anything. So maybe what I should have done here is Scald into their Suicune to try and get a burn and try and make an even playing field. Just because the Protect doesn't really do anything, it just kind of wastes time. And with two Pokemon on the field, time is definitely on my opponent's side, not my side. So I thought about Scalding here, but I went ahead and Snarled just to get some more damage on Eternatus. It's losing health with Life Orb, so the Snarl here plus Life Orb should be enough to knock it out. And then that should leave just the Suicune matchup to end the game. So they go ahead and get another Dynamax Cannon off here, which, as much as I love the animation, I don't love to see it aimed in my direction. But because of Suicune's great bulk and its lowering of Eternatus' special attack, then we don't take as much damage there as I expected to from Dynamax Cannon. and then we can respond with a Snarl, which thanks to the Life Orb recoil, does knock out Eternatus, which leaves just our Suicune versus their Suicune in a 1v1 mono-a-mono showdown. So unfortunately, they are Citrus Berry on their Suicune. They obviously were not getting Leftovers recovery, so I could have read into that. And obviously, I've seen the team before, so I know I should have known what its item was. It did catch me a bit by surprise. But they do get the one-time recovery, while we get Leftovers, which is offset by the burn. So here, I'm going to speed up the video, just because this takes a very long time. This is my first time speeding up videos, so let me know if it turns out horribly, if the audio sounds bad and whatnot. But we have a very, very, very long interaction of me trying to burn their Suicune, and it's just not working. This is probably my worst luck with Scald I've ever had, where I'm already burnt, so they don't really gain much from that, but they do try and just snarl my special attack down. So I do go ahead and I just keep trying to Scald them. I do not get the burn on them, which is really frustrating. So I thought for sure I was going to lose. Fortunately for me, they do end up losing this game by time. And that really surprised me because I ended up with less health on my Suicune than they had on theirs. I'm well into the orange/yellow, and they are not that deep into their health, but we end up winning. So I actually looked up the rules here, and when it comes down to a tie, it's not total health, it is percentage of total health. So because Reshiram only has 100 base HP, and Eternatus has 140, the amount of HP difference there actually let us win that game, even though we were at lower health than them. So that is just pure luck, and it's my first time coming down to that situation, especially where it's the same Pokemon facing each other. So just really interesting there, really interesting way to win, but really good game to my opponent Obsidian, and we will go into the team breakdown. So, to go over the team real quick, to start off we have the restricted Reshiram with the safety goggles and Turbo Blaze as the ability. It is max HP, or not max HP, max special attack, max speed with 4 points in HP with a timid nature, Fusion Flare, Shadow Ball, Earth Power, and Mystical Fire. So, Fusion Flare is just its, in my opinion, its best stab move. It's 100% accurate, 100 power. Blue Flare is stronger, but its accuracy leaves a lot to be desired, so you miss it a lot. So I prefer Fusion Flare personally, just because of the dependability, but you will miss out on some KOs, and it won't burn. So it comes down to like personal preference, but I prefer Fusion Flare. Shadow Ball, like I mentioned, will one-hit KO Mimikyu through Disguise because of Turbo Blaze. So that's a really good option to have. It also easily one-hit KOs Calyrex Shadow. So that's a good thing to have. Earth Power will one-hit KO Stakataka as long as it doesn't have the ground resist berry. And then with the safety goggles, Reshiram ignores Rage Powder, which is really good for the Zacian matchups, which usually have Volcarona. So that helps prevent that, and then in Trick Room, it also helps prevent Amoonguss from getting in your way, which also outside of Trick Room. But that's why it has the safety goggles, mostly for the Volcarona Zacian duo. Next up is Crobat. This is the same Crobat that I used for my Dialga team, but I switched out Haze for Quick Guard. So this team isn't as prone to stat drops as the Dialga team was. No Draco Meteor, obviously. So I switched it out for Quick Guard to prevent Grassy Glides into Suicune, and to also prevent Fake Outs into the teammates. So that's a good move to have. Hypnosis is a gamble, but if you hit it, it can really turn a game around. Tailwind, obvious. Crobat is the quicker Tailwinder, obviously. so it'll get it up quicker if you want to, if there's something you need outspeed. Suicune also has it. Suicune's a little bit more dependable. They both have inner focus, they both get it up, and the fake out won't bother them. So it's really, you really have to figure out which one is better for your team, for your battle, speed or bulk on the Tailwind setter. Next up is Rillaboom. This is a pretty typical Rillaboom I run, just max HP, max attack with 4 points of special defense, with an Assault Vest and Grassy Surge is the ability, and Adamant Nature. Grassy Glide, Knockoff, Wood Hammer, and Fake Out. Grassy Glide, just its best move. Knockoff is very, very useful. It's a really, really good utility move. And it really cripples a lot of sweepers and a lot of bulky Pokemon that need their leftovers. And Palkia and Dialga if they're running their orbs. So it's a really cool move. Wood Hammer is there for the Serena Kyogre duo. Wood Hammer obviously one-hit KOs Kyogre, and it does not get blocked by a Queenly Majesty. And Fake Out is just the best move in the game. Always have Fake Out. Second best after Protect. Fourth, like I mentioned, I stole this one from Wolf Glick's Eternatus team, is a special Landorus T with Life Orb. Intimidate is the ability. Timid Nature with Protect, Earth Power, Sludge Bomb, and Grass Knot. So Earth Power, Sludge Bomb, really, really good special attacking moves. Sludge Bomb takes care of fairies, Earth Power is just its best move. Grass Knot is really good for Groudon and Kyogre. It does a huge, huge chunk into them. And depending on the spread, may get a one-hit KO. But it's a really cool set. Thank you to Wolf Glick for pioneering it. It really fit this team really, really well. So I'm glad I saw that Eternatus video around the same time I was putting this team together. Next up is Dark Urshifu with Unseen Fist as the ability and Black Glasses as the item, with an Adamant Nature. So like I mentioned this in the video, that this Urshifu is literally the same exact spread as my Water Urshifu from my Zamazenta team. And ironically, this is the team that is replacing Zamazenta team. I can only share 5 teams at a time. So Zamazenta is no longer available. The Pokepaste still works if you want to play it on Showdown, but in terms of the cart rental, it is no longer available, unfortunately. But this team is. But anyway, same exact spread. It gives it really good special defense bulk and some pretty good overall bulk with its HP investment, along with not losing speed. Where it falls a little bit short sometimes is attack, but with Wicked Blow and Sucker Punch, I think it actually does better attack-wise than the water one did, because Wicked Blow, I think it's slightly higher base attack, and the Sucker Punch is obviously way stronger than Aqua Jet. So it's a really cool set. It's the main counter into Calyrex Shadow, it and Suicune. But really any ghost type moves and any of the psychic types that are kind of running rampant right now, Urshifu can just destroy those. So it's a really, really cool set. A lot of people will see this team and think that it's the Water Urshifu, so you can kind of use that to surprise them. If they try and bring like a grass type or something to try and counter it, then this Urshifu doesn't care about that. And then most of the other items that you use with Urshifu were taken, like the Focus Sash, Assault Vest, Life Orb. So I went ahead and gave it the Black Glasses. This team needed something that could protect, since Reshiram and Rillaboom already cannot. So it gives it the ability to protect, but it also boosts those dark type moves. So it's a really cool set, I think. It's very, very useful, especially in the late game as a cleanup, and then it can ignore Trick Room for the most part with Sucker Punch. So it's a really versatile Pokemon that really ties a lot of the aspects of the team together. And then last up is Suicune. Like I mentioned, this one I got through a trade. It is actually from the virtual game, like the emulators on the Nintendo DS for Crystal. So it actually came from like it actually has like the little Game Boy symbol, which I think is fun. It is Protect, Scald, Snarl, Tailwind, with Inner Focus as the ability, Leftovers as the item, 252 HP, 52 defense, and 204 special defense, with a bold nature. So this kind of just balances it out in terms of special defense and defense. They're about equal, so it's got relatively the same bulk on both sides, which lets it survive a lot of attacks from Zacian. As you can see, it can really kind of shrug off Calyrex Ice, which is really helpful. It's just insanely bulky. So you can kind of sit there and snarl all day on special attackers. You can scald all day to try and get burns on physical attackers. It's just a really frustrating Pokemon to deal with, and then it supports the team with Tailwind as well. So Suicune is really, really good this generation, especially with Inner Focus. So I think it's a really cool team. I nicknamed it Seto Kaiba because you got Blue Eyes White Dragon on the team. Like I mentioned, Reshiram is not my favorite of the Gen 5 legendaries. My favorite is Zekrom, but Gen 5 far and away my favorite generation. I loved like moving pixels. The 3D models look good now, but the moving pixels were my favorite art style, and I loved the only new Pokemon until you beat the game. That was just really, really cool to me. It got me back into Pokemon, and eventually took me to competitive Pokemon, as you can see. So, really love Gen 5. Really love Reshiram, and this team was a lot of fun. Like I mentioned, even though I usually try to play with teams, post them, and then stop playing with them, this team I'm probably going to stick with. Not stick with, but like keep around. This will probably be the team that I play with. I might try and bring it to like a tournament or two. I think it's a really fun team. It's a pretty complete team. It can handle Trick Room. It's got obvious speed control. Reshiram is a really underused restricted in my opinion. So it's a really fun team in my opinion. Hopefully you like it. Rental code is obviously here. Got Pokepaste and rental code in the description as well. So hopefully you guys like it. Hopefully you use it. I'd love to see people bring it onto the ladder. But we'll go ahead and get into my outro. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you've been enjoying the Series 10 content. I really enjoyed playing with Restricteds. This is the first format I've played in doubles with restricted Pokemon, and I've really, really loved it. I love building the teams around a particular Pokemon, trying to bring out their strength as much as possible. And even though there are some meta picks, I really feel like every restricted has some usage to it, and you just have to be creative to bring it out. Fortunately, Reshiram's a pretty easy one to do. It's a really, really good Pokemon. I really, really recommend people try to use it, but I'm going to stop harping on that now. So we'll be continuing Series 10 next week. I'm working through Nuzlocke. Not really sure how I want to format it, but at least until Series 10 is over, I'm going to stick with these, just because I'm really enjoying these teams. And then I've been thinking about posting content from other video games on here. Pokemon is not the only game I play. I play other games. I've been building some stuff, so I may try and share some things other than Pokemon on this channel. I'm not sure how that'll go, but that's something else that's come forward. But in the meantime, if you really like Pokemon, if you really like Series 10, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, because that will be coming at least until the end of October. I don't know if we've gotten an end date for Series 10 yet, if it's going to end in November, or if it's going to keep going. So I kind of hope it keeps going. I really like this format, but I know they like to change it up a lot. So whatever's coming up, we'll adapt to it, and we'll keep pumping out teams. So definitely check out the teams. They're really fun to play with, and I think you guys will enjoy them. We'll go ahead and sign off now.